Welcome back to the third part of One Man's Faith. We're looking at the love of God, and we're looking at people and how God interacted. And we've talked about Enoch, and now Abraham. And Abraham was a man that God became a friend to. As a matter of fact, Isaiah, was it 41, verse 8 says, "But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, descendant of Abraham, my friend." Isaiah 41:8. So Abraham became a friend of God. God made covenants with Abraham and said, "Listen, I'm going to bless the whole world. Listen, you may not have children now, but you will. And you'll have so many. If you can count the stars, that's how many you will have." And that's what God told Abraham. Abraham believed him. And Abraham had Isaac, and Isaac had Jacob, and then Jacob had 12 sons, and one of the 12 sons was Joseph. And we know that Joseph was sold into slavery and went down into Egypt, became a slave there, then ended up in jail, and went from there to be second in command over all of Egypt. God stayed with him. All right, and they called out to God. I think about 70 people of Jacob's relatives and his 12 children and all went down into the land of Egypt. They stayed in an area called Goshen because they were sheep herders, and the Egyptians didn't like sheep herders, so they separated themselves. But they had favor with the Pharaoh that was there when Joseph was second under him. Well, years go by, that Pharaoh dies, the other Pharaohs rise up, and they see that the children of Israel, or the children of Jacob, which was renamed, he was renamed Israel, started to grow and to prosper and become great, and they became afraid, said, "Hey, we better put these guys under subjection, or they're going to eventually rise up against us." And so they put them in slavery, and they started to call out to God, and they said, "God, you made a covenant with Abraham," and God said, "I did." And so God sent Moses, and through Moses, they came out of Egypt, and God squashed Egypt through the different plagues, and finally through the 10th plague, the death of all the firstborn of anybody that didn't put the blood on their door, so that the death angel would pass over, which is why we call it Passover. After that, they said, "Get out of here." And so they went down to the Red Sea to cross it. Pharaoh said, "What have I done? I've gotten rid of all my slave labor." And so he and his army went after them, and Israel was caught between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army. And Moses took his rod, struck the Red Sea, and it opened and became dry land, and they walked across. And after they got across, Pharaoh's army got there, they started across, and it caved in on them, and it was just completely obliterated Egypt. And God took them out into the desert. And in Exodus 19, Exodus 19 says in verse 4, "You yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now then, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be my own possession among all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." Listen to that. You shall be my own possession. None of the other nations did he tell this to. And they became his own people. A special treasure. A special treasure. As a matter of fact, where it says my own possession, The other translation of that, I'll just read it this way. Now then, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be my special treasure. What's the other word for that? Daily delight. We talked about that last week. They were going to be special to God. And then in Exodus 29, the Lord does something interesting. Verse 44, and I will consecrate the tent of meeting and the altar, and I will also consecrate Aaron and his sons to minister as priests to me, and I will dwell among the sons of Israel and be their God. And they shall know that I am their Lord, who brought them up out of the land of Egypt, that I might dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. What's God saying? He's saying, hey guys, I want to be with you. I want to dwell among you. You're living in tents. Make me one. Make me a tent. Put it right in your middle, right in the midst of you, so that I can be with you. I want to be with you. I want to be among you. I want to be your God. And I'll provide for you. And so he provided manna, which was really supposed to only last a couple weeks until they got through and got over to the promised land. But he provided daily for them manna, and that wasn't good enough for them. And they complained and said, what is this? Come on, we need meat. And so God said, through Moses, he said, tell them, okay, I'm going to provide you meat. He said, what are you going to do? Just drop them in on us? And God caused the winds to blow, and somehow a gazillion quail fell down, and they were able to pick them up, and God continually did that for them throughout the time they were in the wilderness. God provided water for them. Now listen, I've talked about this before, but we're talking almost 3 million or possibly more people in the wilderness. No water. It's like us now going down over the hill further south and trying to get water out of the Pahrump River. It ain't going to happen. There was no water. It was just like it is here. They couldn't dig deep enough. There was no water, and they weren't staying in one place. They were moving. And so God provided water. It would take 300 tank cars of water, 300 tank cars of water. That's a couple of million gallons per day. And God did it because they were his people. And God provided a covering for them during the day so that the hot sun wouldn't burn down on them. He provided and led them by a cloud that covered them. And at night, he provided a light to keep them warm. As we know out here in the desert, it can get kind of cold at night. The temperature drops 30 degrees in no time at all. And so he was able to keep them warm and to keep the wild animals away. Because God was there in their midst. He did it because he wanted to be with them. Do you hear that? He wanted to be with them. I want to dwell among you, he says. And in Leviticus 26, God says, and you shall not make for yourselves idols, nor shall you set up for yourselves an image or sacred pillar, nor shall you place a figured stone in your land to bow down to, for I am the Lord your God. You shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary. I am your Lord. If you walk in my statutes and keep my commandments so as to carry them out, then I shall give you rain in your season, so that the land will yield its produce and the trees its fruit and will bear their fruit. Indeed, your threshing shall last for you from the grape gathering until grape gathering will last until sowing time, and you will thus eat your food. God, he says, listen, I'm going to provide seasons, and I'm going to provide the rain for you when you need it, and your wheat will last. You will have enough wheat until it's time for the grapes, and then you'll have the rest of the food. And matter of fact, he even called the promised land the land flowing with milk and honey. He said, I'm going to do these things for you if you'll be my people. Only God can make a promise like this. And he did. But they got to the river, and God said, listen, I want you to see how great this is going to be. Send 12 spies over into the land. Let them spy it out, bring back stuff so that you can see how this land really does flow with milk and honey. Okay, now, milk and honey, it's a literary term. It doesn't mean that when they crossed over the Jordan, they were walking in milk and it was sticky and gooey because of the honey mixed in with it. Milk and honey refer to the fact that milk comes from cows or goats. So it's flowing with milk. In other words, your livestock are going to thrive. And honey comes from bees. Bees are needed to populate 90% of our fruit trees. And so to say it's flowing with honey means it's flowing with bees, which means it's flowing with fruit. And when they went over, they grabbed hold of a stack of grapes that was so big that they had to carry it on a pole between two people. It wasn't just something they could carry in their hands. The grapes were so big. And they came back and they said, hey, wow, it's just as Moses said it would be. God said that it would be flowing with milk and honey, and man, it is flowing with milk and honey. But at the end of 40 days, when they came back, they came to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation, and they said to them, we went to the land where you sent us, and it certainly does flow with milk and honey, and this is its fruit, and it was showing them that. Nevertheless, the people who live in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large, and moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. Now, do you hear what's happening? They're saying, listen, yes, but. All right, think about that for just a second. I've got to take a break, and we'll be right back.